now.
All right, good morning. I show that it's 10:30 here, and today's transfer portal, this is an introduction and information session here. We just would like to welcome you. Welcome to our ADs and assistants that are new to the job, and welcome to our ADs that are maybe in a different location. I see a mixture of both, so we appreciate you being here today. If you could just enter into chat, if you would, your role in your office. Are you an AD? Are you an admin assistant? Just enter your role into the chat if you would. Again, we are recording this session. It assists us to know who is here today, and also information for the future as well. This will not be the last time you hear about the portal, but this is our first recorded version for the 2021 year. Understand a couple of things. We're going to walk backwards before we move forward. This is new technology integrated into our current website. For those of you that were in the position or entering transfers last year, you were really doing so in old technology, utilizing a portion of our old website. And you'll notice differences in that. As I would say, it's also progress. Please also know that this is really version 1.0 or 2.0, whatever version we're on, because it changes rapidly, and your feedback and comments are critical and vital for the success of this portal, and also for us to have the ability to help you. As we move forward here, again, we're going to walk a little bit backwards just in the transfer process, how language is consistent with bylaw and policy, yet maybe a little bit different in the portal in some of the terms that we use. So we're going to point that out here today. So I noted that the process itself, common language, then we're going to really delve into the portal. Susie and Laura, anything I missed there?
I don't think so. We're good to go.
All right, we'll say this again at the end. You have a website help guide. I believe that is on your dashboard. That will assist you in working through this in between this meeting and the next set of information that you get. If you have questions, know that that is a resource for you. All right, you saw this maybe in the update that went out. What we've done from the old process is we've taken what was called the student transfer report and really integrated it right into the portal process. So hopefully it's one less step that you have to send to the sending from the sending school or to the sending school. So that's integrated right in. The language should be, matching more with our current bylaws as bylaws or policies actually change. It should be completed by someone that has it needs to be completed by someone that has the admin rights. Ultimately, our activities administrators, you are responsible for that information, making sure that it is accurate, whether you share your login and so on and so forth. That is up to you, but you are ultimately responsible for what is entered into the portal itself. We'll remind you again on this, you have to complete it in one sitting, right? That's the way the technology is set up. So make sure you complete it. Laura's going to have a tip for you later on in the presentation, whatever is easiest for you, but don't get into that process if you don't have the time to complete at least that student transfer that you're working on. And again, you must make an eligibility determination that we agree with, or Susie agrees with, or I agree with, before a review can be initiated, which leads right into the next. Remember, reviews don't begin until the third week in August, according to policy under bylaw 111. Everything we're talking about here, again, will be found in bylaw 111 in the handbook if you need. Susie, Laura, again, anything that I should emphasize or that I missed?
I think one thing to clarify, Bob, the third bullet point that talks about someone with school administration rights, That would be anyone who has access to an AD dashboard. So if that is an AD, an assistant AD, or an AD assistant, they will each have access to the transfers and review within your school. But again, if you as an AD assign that to someone else to do, remember that you are responsible for what they are doing within that portal part of it. But everyone in your office does have access to it. So determining the correct workflow for you will be important.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Again, because we are recording this session here today to be utilized down the road, questions if you would enter into chat. And who's the host here? Laura, is it you or is it Susie?
I believe they're coming to me.
Okay, so Laura, as she gets questions, she can ask those to make sure we get those answered here today. Just language that's being used here today. A little bit different than what's in bylaw and policy, where we talk about the sending school, the receiving school. In the portal itself, you'll notice that it says the sending AD, right? And the receiving AD. So that sending AD is where the student came from, or that sending school. The receiving AD is the person who is completing the portal work or transfer work. And then also that they're at that receiving school. That is where they're going to begin on day one and or begin on the first day of school. The transfer portal, again, understand what that transfer is and when that begins. And the review is, again, language that is used that is current within policy, also used to be referred to as an appeal. Again, I think this is a useful tool as you're working through that transfer process. It's on page 25 in your handbook if you want to use it. Sometimes it's good to educate the parents and or the student as to where you're at and what will happen next, especially when you get to that step 4. So, really what you're doing is you're recognizing you have a new student, utilize that student information, whether you're getting it from them personally, or if it's in your student information system. And that portal really is step 3, which is step 1 on that flow chart. So again, just a reminder of where you're at in that transfer eligibility process. Use that flow chart again, found on page 25, either in the electronic handbook and or I believe, Susie, in our new handbook, which we should be getting, it's still on page 5. Susie, is that correct?
It's 25 in the current handbook.
Yes.
It is in the new one too, Susie.
As
The
well,
new
okay.
handbook is posted for ADs as of yesterday, and it is still page 25, I believe.
Awesome, thanks.
Great, thanks for confirming that, Susie and Lauren. What we're going to do now, I'm going to turn it really over to Susie, I believe at this point, who's going to work with you and walk you through the actual process with the portal itself. Susie?
Good morning, everybody. So as you can see on the slide, you are going to find the transfer portal button on your AD dashboard. And you will click on the start a transfer request to begin a new transfer form. So it's really kind of broken down into 4 steps. Step 1 would be for the receiving school AD to complete. And it's the very basic overview of the student record, name, address, date of birth, grade. At the end of step 1, you're going to submit it and it's going to go to the sending school. And that's where they're going to confirm that the student was eligible when they left. And if they were not eligible, they'll be able to put in the information as to why. And then when they submit it, it's going to come back to your dashboard as waiting on the receiving AD. And that's where you kind of get into the bulk of the transfer situation. Was it a family residence change? And all those questions that change based on how you answer them. When you're able to complete that and submit it, then it's going to come back to the MSHSL for our review.
Susie, can I stop you there and ask a question?
Yep.
So between step 1 and step 2, so we have some people that are on here today that have already worked through the portal. How does it get from step 1 to step 2? Right. So how does it get from the receiving school where the student will be attending or currently is attending to that sending school? They enter the school and it automatically populates the AD, or how does that work?
Yep, so if it's a member school, they can choose it from a drop-down menu. If it's a non-member school, they're gonna enter the name of the school and who the contact is, the AD or the person that would be responsible for completing it. And they'll have an opportunity to enter that email address. And so even in the case of a non-member school, they will still get an email notification. So if it's an out-of-state school or an in-state non-member, and then they'll get an email notification to set up a, Laura, help me out here.
And just to clarify, that account gets set up for them. We've tried to make it
Okay.
as easy as possible for that non-MSHSL AD or admin or head of school, whoever that might be. That person receives 2 emails, one saying, here's your account, and one saying, here's where you go to provide some information about the student who left your school. So if you happen to know that person and have had any contact with them, giving them a heads up that you're going to receive 2 emails from the Minnesota State High School League is helpful. But we also believe we've written those emails carefully and personally enough that they won't be seen as spam, and those people will respond and react to them. We did have, I think, 2 yesterday go through that process already. And I don't know if they gave them a heads up, but those came back pretty quickly. So again, if you know that person or have some contact with it, they will be getting 2 emails that say you have an account set up, and please complete this information for any non-MSHSL schools.
Yeah, really good information, both Laura and Susie. So I think it's critical to understand that when it's a non-member school, it works a little bit different than if it's that member school. Both are working, by the way, and as Laura did state, we had a couple of non-members out of state schools that did respond within the system, I believe, Susie. So just to understand that between step 1 and step 2, how that might differ, but also how it's more automated and hopefully more effective. Susie?
Yep, I would agree. Thanks. Are we ready for slide 9?
I believe so.
Okay. So the only exception to what we were just talking about as far as a member school and an out-of-state school and how the steps work would be if it's a foreign or international school. So step 1 would again initiate with the receiving school AD. They will forward it to, or they will submit it, and that one will actually come to the MSHSL, where I will be able to complete that and move it back to the receiving AD. And then again, once the receiving AD finishes it, it'll come back to the MSHSL for review. Anything else there, Laura, do you think?
Nope, I think that's it's just a piece that we really don't have a contact for that international school. So Susie acts as that person to just push that back to you at that point. So this is a quick screenshot of what you will start to see on your dashboard as you start to work as either the sending or receiving AD with a student. If you do not have someone currently is either a sending or receiving school, when you click on that transfer portal button, right now you don't see this. When you have a student that is either sending or receiving out of your school, you will start to see this dashboard with a progress as it goes through. A couple of things to note, there are really 2 columns in here that are blue and clickable. The first one is underneath their name, and you can see our test screen here. This is a student's name. When we were testing a divorce option, this would actually be the name of a student. If you are going to work with a student, this is the place that you would click to edit, add information, et cetera, about that student. When you click on this, you're going to see one of 2 things. If you have what I would call the right to work with that student because it's waiting for you, you're going to see the right to add information. If you click on this and it's not your time or your turn to add information, you are going to get an error screen at this point because you don't have the right at that point to add information. So again, when you see that transfer status as it's waiting on you, then this is where you'll go to add information. If that transfer status is not waiting on you, you're not going to be able to do anything here because it's simply not your time to do anything with that. Underneath progress, where it says view progress, This is your spot to click in and see everything that's been submitted so far about that student. This would have the step 1 that Susie referred to, where you put in the basic information. If the other AD has added information, you'll see what he or she has added. And if you've added your step 3, you'll also see that progress at this point. So in this column, you're really getting a read only of everything that's been added about that student. The column that I've blocked off here, this is really the status of that transfer. You're going to see things here like waiting on sending AD, waiting on receiving AD, waiting on Minnesota State High School League. It might say an agree. It might say corrections needed. But this is really where you can look to see where that status is at. Again, so just the difference between these two columns. One is a view progress only. The other is your edit or add additional information when it is your turn or your opportunity within that process. The next screen is just a reminder, again, as Bob shared at the very beginning, your step, whether that's step 1, 2, or 3 as it's along the process, needs to be completed in one sitting. That is one piece of content that gets submitted about that student. So thinking about making sure that you have the time to do that, making sure that you've gathered the needed information is important. In that set of directions online, we've provided a number of screenshots there that kind of give you an idea of what you're going to be asked. However, because many of the questions use logic of if I answer this, then I'm going to have to answer these questions, we can't provide you all of those within those screenshots. So again, knowing the first few times as you go through this, giving yourself enough time to do it will be helpful. You'll know after a while what are those questions that I'm going to be asked. Gathering your information will be important, or knowing how you can get that as you're working through it. And finally, kind of leaving yourself a little bit of an out. I would always, if you get called away, hit print on that, or hit print to PDF, so you have access to the things that you've already entered in. I would say that each of those steps, step 1 for you is probably a 5 to 10 minute piece if you've gathered the information about that student. If you're in it and look at a question and then go out to gather the information, obviously it's going to take you a little bit longer. But again, just please, the first times you go through it, give yourself enough time so that you don't get stuck in the middle of it and start to run out of time. And then finally, when you hit submit on the bottom, or that gold send to the other AD button, you will first of all receive a confirmation message similar to what the screenshot looks like. So please watch for that. And then that student will also show up on your transfer portal or dashboard. There are a number of questions. The majority of the questions in here are required questions. And you will get a pop-up that tells you you haven't answered that required question if you haven't answered it. But again, sometimes in our rush to do things, we hit submit and don't notice that popped up to say you haven't answered this question and think that we're done. So again, those first times you work through it, make sure that you answer the questions. Please watch carefully for those confirmation messages so that you know that it got submitted. And then a second check is always to look back at your transfer portal dashboard, and you'll see that student on there and watch that process move forward. Susie, I'm going to turn it back to you a little bit with a few of the things that play in with what you do throughout this process.
Thank you. So as we've mentioned throughout this meeting today, email notifications will be sent for each step. So as a step is completed, there will be a notification going to the proper person for them to move it on to the next step. The MSHSL will request corrections by the receiving AD in the event that something isn't right in the form. Maybe you missed a question. Maybe it looks like you've made a wrong determination based on the situation. We do have an area on the bottom of the form where I can enter information as to what we're still looking for and mark it as needs corrections. And then it's going to come back to you stating that it needs corrections. You'll be able to go in and make those changes and submit it back to the MSHSL for another look at the form. The goal in this is to make sure that the AD is making the proper determination based on your knowledge of the bylaws and the student's situation around the 5 provisions in the transfer review. Thoughts on that, Bob?
I think it's all good. And remember, the determination is only as good as the information that you enter, right? So make sure that you have valid information that you've entered. Sometimes you have to do a little research, maybe on address or voters registration or ID, things like that. Make sure you have the most up-to-date information so you can make that determination. If something is corrected, no blame or shame, right? Susie's going to work through that and make sure that we're on the same page and that you are using student athletes that are eligible to participate. Again, we don't recommend that you are playing a student athlete that hasn't been through this process yet to assist you. So we don't get to a point where you have to do a report form for the use of an ineligible athlete. That's what we're all trying to avoid through this. So again, it's only as good as the information that you enter, and that's what we're going to base the determination on when we agree or disagree on that. All right, I think we can move on to 13, slide 13. I love when I get the calls that say, hey, I wanted to call you, Bob, because I know how busy Susie is. What I would like you to do, if all possible, to assist you in being more effective and efficient as well, start with Susie if you can around eligibility. She's really good at that. Email, I think Susie always works best. If you're looking for feedback on a question or you're somewhere in the portal and you're stuck, use that email. Susie's very, very good at getting back to you very quickly. If she doesn't have an answer, I will assist her to the best of my ability. If Susie isn't available, you can reach out to me as well. We're going to assist you as timely as we possibly can as we work through these transfers. Susie, anything I missed there before we turn it back to Laura?
Nope, I don't think so. Thanks.
All right, Laura?
So I'm going to give you a reminder of this and then also address a number of questions that are in the chat as we wrap up here today. Remember that at the top right-hand side of your dashboard, you have a website help guide button. That takes you to the newly revamped website guide. In year 2, our directions are much different than they were in year 1 as we come back to some of these things. I will add the recording from today directly into this website guide in the transfers and review area of it. This is a live document that has a number of clickable links in it. So as you're in the table of contents, for example, feel free to click down into the transfers and reviews section. It is a long document and will likely grow, but it's helpful to have everything in one place. So a couple of questions that I see in the chat, and again, I think we've answered a few of these, but always helpful to say them again. I've seen a couple of questions about out-of-state schools and if they don't reply. I think those would be working with Susie to best decide how to progress with those. That is a challenge that's happened in the past also, and are likely just on a case-by-case basis of how do we move forward with this one. So if you have an out-of-state school that is not replying in a timely fashion, working with Susie on that. A question about notifications. Currently, there is not a notification at the top of your dashboard that you have a transfer or review waiting for you, like there are for coaches requesting to get into your school. Those are coming to everyone with school administration rights as an email. So it might be you, it might be your AD, it might be your assistant AD. Each of you will get that email that says that a transfer review needs your attention. So I believe that adding that to the top of the dashboard would be a helpful thing for many of you because sometimes you miss those emails, but those are coming as emails. And then you can also see that status transfer change. But again, likely that notification is a better option for that. Again, that comment that those do send to everyone. I made a question about, can we get a list of all of the needed information? Much of that is in this guide. I will do a second look through on those screenshots to make sure that they're as good as they can be. But again, that it's a challenge to get you all of the questions because a number of those questions use some logic where the secondary questions come off the first question. So I believe that most of that information that you need, especially in step 1 and 2, you can find in this guide as you work through that. Some questions in there around dates, the desired transfer date. Susie, do you want to talk about that a little bit? And what date they should be putting in for that desired transfer date?
Was that something that we talked about yesterday? And do we know if that will be addressed?
Well, I think the one date is the first date of practice or.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the important one is going to be the first date of fall practice or first date of attendance at your school. And then the desired transfer date should match that if we're keeping that field there. And then the last date on step 1 would be the current date, the date that you're submitting it. Laura, do we have any feedback on that second date field?
I don't at this point.
Okay, that was brought up yesterday and we have talked about it, but
so I see a number of other questions in here that many are starting to go into even questions about the transfer process and options that are in there. Bob, I think this gives us a good list of things to talk about through LEAD and through updates as we continue to learn, inform, teach, et cetera, around transfers and eligibility.
Yeah, I would agree. That was the intent of this session here. I think for LEAD next Tuesday, you'll note that we did offer this session. There was a recording. I will share with you some, I would call them hot topics around eligibility at that point, and we'll continue to work at area meetings as well with questions that we get around eligibility.
So thanks, everyone. Appreciate all of you being here. Again, this recording will go up for your reference or as you work with other ADs or others within your office that need some support. Hope you found this helpful, and we will see many of you next Tuesday on LEAD at 10:45. Have a great rest of your day.